Hey, it's Dr. Gayla Gorman, and this is the inaugural journey of my new live stream that I am calling Live Less Stressed Live. And so, what we're going to focus on here as we continue this series, hopefully most weeks, is how we manage chronic stress. If we don't learn to manage chronic stress, then that stress escalates and turns toxic. I talk about this in my book, What's Your Kryptonite? And I also talk about the MOLT method I developed. This MOLT method is what we focus on in the Wellness Warriors community. MOLT is an acronym. M is for mindset, O is for order, L is for lifestyle, and T is for toxins. And so if you have watched my podcast, the show is Let's Talk Toxins, and it focuses on the T in MOLT because that's arguably the hardest one to address, the one that typically gives us the most challenge. But things like mindset, establishing order in our world, and making lifestyle adjustments, those are within our control, and we can do something about them. And so one of the things I'm going to be doing here is answering questions from people just like you. And so, so if you are watching this and you have not submitted your question, then take this opportunity to comment question, and we'll make sure you get a link to the form. I have a form where you submit your question, and that way then we always know that we get them answered. If for some reason it doesn't get selected to be answered on the show, I'll make sure that you get a response from me or my staff, and we'll point you in the right direction. So just for this first episode, I thought I would start with just explaining one of the questions that I often get asked, especially when I am interviewed on shows for my book. And that is, how do we identify our kryptonite? And the way I explain it is that the thing that makes kryptonite so challenging is that it's not like it's sitting out on the middle of the dining room table. If you think about the superhero movies, Superman or Superwoman, they know that their energy is being drained, but they have no idea where that kryptonite is. They just know from experience that it's got to be somewhere in the vicinity of where they are, and they have to figure out fast how to eliminate it or manage it. Otherwise, it's going to render them pretty much useless as a superhero. And since most women kind of see themselves as a superhero in their world, we definitely are the ones that are the glue keeping everything together under our roof typically. It's really important that we maintain our superwoman status. That's why I used that as the subtitle for the book. And so the way we identify our kryptonite really starts with not suppressing symptoms. So just say no to symptom suppression. You'll hear me repeat that often. And how does that show up? The symptom suppression shows up as taking over-the-counter medication to quiet a headache or deal with digestive issues, or putting cream on a skin eruption, any of those sorts of things. Whether it's an over-the-counter supplement, allergy relief medication is a great example. And when the over-the-counter medication kind of stops working, that's when people tend to turn to stronger prescription medication, and then they start down that slippery slope where one medication leads to another, and so it's really important that when you start seeing the signs and symptoms, that rather than doing what we've been conditioned to do all of our lives, I understand this is a really big challenge and a completely different way of approaching your health, is to say, no, I'm not going to suppress the symptom. I'm going to figure out what's causing it. Just know that the symptom is not the first sign that there's a problem going on. Your body's been trying to send you subtle signals for a while. By the time the symptom reaches a magnitude where you simply can't ignore it, that's a sign that the problem has really escalated to the degree that it is becoming a problem. And the way I describe this is that dis-ease is escalating to disease. So if you continue ignoring it, even by suppressing symptoms with some sort of medication, then that's what's going on internally. And that's what I want you to avoid. I don't want you to end up having problems escalate. So we want to make sure that we're catching these sorts of toxic stressors before they're escalating to the point where you really have some big health issue that has to be dealt with. And the way we do that is we identify the kryptonite. It's unique to every individual. And then we take appropriate measures in our environment, making lifestyle adjustments. We do our work to reduce the stressors. Sometimes that's emotional stress, but oftentimes it's not just emotional stress. Emotional stress tends to be the straw that broke the camel's back. And so our bodies have been dealing with all of these stressors that have been accumulating. And then by the time that stress level, that internal stress level, hits kind of a precipice, a tipping point, now you have some external stressor like a stressful event or something like that. And that's the straw that broke, excuse me, that's the straw that broke the camel's back, essentially, like lit the bomb and the problem explodes. And so what we need to do is we need to be really aware of what's going on and what's triggering the problem, and then put two and two together, start connecting the dots. This can be an issue to unravel, but it becomes more of an issue to unravel the longer it goes on without having some sort of intervention, essentially. So that intervention looks like saying, I'm not going to suppress the symptom, and I'm going to get appropriate help to help me, sort of figure out what's actually causing the problem. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what it looks like to identify your kryptonite. And if I could be really specific, I would. But the problem is we're all unique and individual, and what's going to work for you is not going to necessarily work for another person. When I work with somebody individually, I tend to have like a framework that I work with. That framework is the FATEEG formula. FATEEG is an acronym. F is for fuel. A is for awareness. I already talked to you about awareness. Fuel is essentially how our body makes energy. So that's the food we eat, the air we breathe, and the hydration, water as well. And your body uses all of those things to convert them into energy. And so if any of those are deficient or are coming in with excessive toxins, then it's no wonder why our energy levels are low and we don't have the energy to do the repair work that needs to happen in order to keep our body in optimal condition. The fuel, the awareness, I talked to you about awareness and how important that is. You're not going to be able to connect these dots unless you develop that awareness, and you're not going to develop the awareness if you immediately reach for some symptom suppressor. Now, I will say that there are times when we know what caused whatever symptom. Let's just say we drank an extra glass of wine last night and it essentially created a headache the next morning. So the next morning, what do you want to do? You want to reach for that symptom suppressor to relieve that headache so that you can just go on about your day. I encourage you not to do that if at all possible, because you kind of need to experience what that additional toxicity caused as a byproduct, essentially. And so if you have a super important meeting and you just have to take a symptom suppressor, then you can do that. But you definitely don't want to be doing that any more than once every 1, 2, 3 months. And when I first start talking to women about this, they're shocked because they think, well, I'm taking symptom suppressors daily or, at least several times a week. And when you're trying to adjust to only taking something, when it's an absolute emergency, and that emergency, it doesn't qualify as an emergency unless it's once every month or 2 or 3. Now that puts things in a different perspective. And so that can be really helpful to kind of think about it that way. But what works for one person doesn't work for another. And so if you've got some stressor that has made the situation more difficult just for a short period of time, then that's even more of a reason to slow down and reduce the stress and to support your body in managing all of this toxicity that it's being bombarded with. I will say that until you start really supporting your body in the detoxing process and peeling off the layers, if you will, of the accumulated toxicity, you won't really know what sort of stubborn toxicity you're going to need to take a more targeted approach with. And that's one of the reasons why I recommend things like my Human Energy System Reboot. We do that regularly in the Wellness Warriors membership, along with other sprints that we practice regularly. And so doing those kinds of things can help us eliminate the things that our body can clear easily. And we want to do that so that when we really get to more of the root cause of the problem, that's going to require, let's just call it, more effort, and tends to be more costly too, because often we need supplements and binders and herbs and different supplements that support our body and that help to mobilize the toxicity, bind the toxicity, and escort it out of the body. And so that process, if the body could do it naturally, it would. And so when you get where you've cleared the surface kind of things, then your body gets to the point where it's like, I can't handle this with just the resources that I have naturally. And so that's where we really get to some of my more customized protocols, but that's not necessary. Sometimes it's not necessary at all if your body is in pretty good shape and can handle the detoxing naturally, but it's certainly not necessary initially. You want to really learn the foundational things and help your body just start the detoxing process. So what other questions do you have for me today? Um, one of the questions that I often get is what supplement should I take? And this is another thing where it tends to defy logic, I guess is how I would put it. So I don't recommend that you take any supplement long term. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I recommend that you read the book if you're wanting a really deep dive on how I arrived at this philosophy. But essentially, what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to tune up our body and get our body to do what it was designed to do naturally. And that won't happen if we're using supplements essentially to replace medication. We're still suppressing symptoms. And so the way I recommend using supplements is in these targeted sprints of whatever sort. Occasionally, we'll take a supplement for 3 to 6 weeks. But if you've been taking a supplement for more than 3 to 6 months, then just know that that supplement isn't helping you anymore. And it's probably doing damage because it's weakening your internal systems. If we are taking any sort of supplement long term, that tends to be something that I call nutrition enhancement. And so if our diets are really lacking, which is true even for those of us who eat really healthy, sometimes we need to supplement with things that improve the nutrient density of what we're consuming. And so if that's the case, then we're going to add these supplements that would improve what we're consuming, but we still want to rotate them because I want to get them from different sources. I also probably won't take them every single day. We'll mix it up and we'll essentially force our body to draw what it's got in reserve sometimes. And sometimes we will add in some extra to sort of boost our levels. These are the sort of things that that just help keep our body tuned up. It's like going to the gym and doing the exact same exercise every day. Your muscle memory is just going to kick in after a period of time, and you're really not going to get much benefit from that. If you do not mix it up and do different things regularly and give your body a break, you're not going to really keep your body tuned up. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to keep our digestive system tuned up, keep our microbiome diverse and ready to deal with whatever comes its way. We want our body to be able to take what we're consuming and produce energy naturally. And most importantly, we want to be able to sleep soundly at night, because when we sleep is when all the rest and repair happens. And so if things aren't functioning properly in the daytime, don't be surprised if sleep's not, don't be surprised if sleep's not happening naturally. So so it's just so important that we are taking a multi-prong approach, and that we are really taking care of our bodies, becoming our own primary care person. That's PCP. And in my book, I really encourage women to become their own PCP. And that means that we essentially put um, our mask on first, and we take care of ourselves first. And we know that if we're taking care of ourselves, that we have a lot more to give to all those stakeholders in our world that really depend on us. I have lost too many people in my life to dis-ease escalating to disease. You've probably had a similar experience. I've seen far too many people just in recent years that even at a younger age have really had issues that just defy logic. And it's this kryptonite, it's this toxicity that is so prevalent in our world that our bodies just were not designed to handle. So we've got to come up with new and improved strategies for for making sure that our body is really optimized to uh, do what it needs to do, and that we're okay with it when it can't handle something. If you've got heavy metal toxicity, your body's most likely not going to be able to detox that on its own. It's going to get stored in your tissues, and that's going to have to be removed with a targeted detox protocol. There are other toxic, there are other toxins. There's other types of toxicity or toxins that have a similar sort of situation going on. Even something like parasites. My parasite episode is coming out tomorrow, and parasites are one of those things that are very hard to detect. Some of the signs you can see, but often parasites go into hiding, and so even if you're using a parasite detox protocol, unless you do it at the right time and in the right combination, it's not likely to work. And if you're counting on a lab test to prove that you've got parasites, a lot of times, because they're so good at hiding out in your body, it won't even show up. And so don't just think that because you've had the tests that there's nothing wrong. If you know there's something wrong, there's something wrong. And it just doesn't register on normal lab tests. And it's some sort of combination that is not yet recognized. And again, that just explains why I take the approach that we're all very unique and there is no cookie cutter um, supplement protocol or cookie cutter approach that's going to solve every problem. Personally, I use bioenergetic testing because I want to communicate with the body and get the body to tell me what's going on and what it's capable of dealing with right now. I can do that remotely. You don't have to be here in my office. I use essentially quantum physics and the energetic signatures of your body, and can figure out where we need to start and what we need to focus on. But whatever approach you use, if you have a local practitioner that specializes in functional medicine, just make sure that they're not just prescribing a bunch of supplements instead of really getting to the bottom of whatever's going on, identifying the root cause so that the root cause can be addressed. A lot of times they'll talk about addressing the root cause, but really their approach is doing nothing more than using natural remedies to suppress symptoms. And I get it. The prevalent thinking is, and particularly even from the patients that we see, the prevalent thinking is, I just want these symptoms to recede. Um, I don't just want the symptom to recede. I want the problem to be resolved, because if I just force the symptom to recede, I have not necessarily solved the problem. If I address the root cause, the symptom will recede naturally. If I try to address the symptom from like the outside in, then I've just shoved the symptom or the problem further into the body. If I basically look at the symptom like it's my clue, and I can follow the symptom to the root cause, now I can address the root cause and the symptom just dissolves naturally. So that's kind of how I approach things, and how we use the MOLT method and the fatigue formula. Continuing with the fatigue formula, T in fatigue, FATEEG. T in fatigue is for toxins. We're going to talk about toxins a lot. E is for elimination. So elimination is critical. If your body cannot eliminate the toxins that are mobilized, then they're just going to get stored somewhere else. And your body may have done a better job storing it the first time. So when you start to mobilize this toxicity, you want to make sure that you're prepared to eliminate it properly. And then the second E is for energy, and I use microcurrent and microcurrent medicine and some other approaches to help your body sort of jumpstart the energy production, because your body needs energy to be able to do this work and do the repair and maintenance work that probably has been deferred for a while if these issues have been ongoing. And then G is for genetics. And the way I talk about genetics is that essentially you'll have some sort of genetic situation, and the doctor will tell you some statistic. 40% have this express and 60% don't, or 50-50, or whatever the statistic is. And so women will come to me and they'll say, well, I have this because the doctor said 40% of people have this problem that have this genetic predisposition. And I say, well, what about the 60% that don't have it express? We want you to be in the 60% that don't express the genetic predisposition. And we don't want to try to do that by, hitting the problem with a sledgehammer. That's going to cause more problems in the long run. We want to make sure that we are shoring up your body's defenses so that there's no room for that to express. And so addressing the genetic predisposition is extremely important, because we want to know what we're dealing with. And we want to make sure that we are being really diligent in applying whatever mitigation strategies are appropriate for the situation, so that it's just not an issue. And that's the goal. The goal is to experience optimal health and well-being, and to age gracefully, and experience a long life well lived. And that requires that we live less stressed. And so that's what we're going to be doing here most weeks. And so if you have not subscribed to the channel yet, you want to make sure you subscribe. You want to hit the notification bell, and remember to comment question, and we will send you a link to the form so you can ask your question so that I can answer it on a future episode. Let's just see, do we have any other questions here? I don't see any other questions. It's kind of hard to do all of this all by myself here. I don't have my assistant here with me tonight. but I'm not seeing any more questions coming in. So, so I'm going to take this opportunity to bring this one to a close, and just a reminder to live less stressed. And I will see you next time.